Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are unpacking a topic that touches literally almost every single product we buy, yet it operates almost entirely behind the scenes. I'm talking about containers and packaging. In this explainer, our goal is to translate what might seem like, well, kind of dry sustainability accounting into the really fascinating, real-world journey of a package's circular life cycle. We're going to see exactly how companies are held accountable for their environmental footprint, and we're not talking about vague promises here. We are talking about hard, verifiable data. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our four-step roadmap to understand this shift. First, we'll enter the circular economy. Second, rethinking our raw materials. Third, designing for the loop. And finally, strategies for sustainable life cycles. All right, section 1, enter the circular economy. This is where we set the rules of the game. We are in the middle of a massive paradigm shift in the packaging industry. We're moving away from that old linear model, the whole take, make, dispose thing, where things are made, used once, and just thrown away. Instead, we are moving toward a meticulously tracked circular economy. But how do we actually know if a company is truly participating in this, right? Well, to answer that, we have to look at the ultimate accountability tool, the SASB standards, which are now part of the IFRS Foundation. This framework is what companies use to report their sustainability risks and opportunities to investors. Basically, it means when a company claims their packaging is sustainable, there's no greenwashing allowed. They have to back it up with standardized, verifiable data. And if we look specifically at the standard for containers and packaging, there's this fascinating section for product lifecycle management. Notice the 3 specific areas we're exploring today. First, the percentage of raw materials from sustainable sources. Second, the actual revenue generated from sustainable products. And third, the overarching strategies to reduce environmental impact. This is literally the exact playbook investors use to evaluate if a company is really dedicated to the circular economy. Moving on to section 2. Rethinking our raw materials. This is all about tracking the inputs, literally by weight. Think about it. Every package starts as raw ingredients, right? And in a circular economy, the whole goal is to fundamentally change what those ingredients actually are. Under these standards, companies have to meticulously track these inputs by percentage of weight. Let's look at the first major category, which is recycled content. The standard clearly defines this as the proportion by mass of recovered material in a product. But notice the strict limitation here. It is strictly limited to pre-consumer and post-consumer materials. It only counts materials that would have otherwise been dumped as waste or burned for energy, but were rescued and used as a material input instead. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it busts some common industry jargon. Let's contrast these two terms. Pre-consumer material is stuff diverted from the waste stream during manufacturing. But here is the kicker. It strictly excludes rework or scrap that a factory can just dump right back into the exact same manufacturing process. That does not count. On the flip side, post-consumer material is what most of us actually think of when we hear recycling. It's the material generated by households or commercial end users that can't be used for its original purpose anymore. Think of your curbside recycling bin. Beyond recycled content, companies are also tracking renewable resources. So these are materials composed of biomass from a living source. We're talking about organic stuff like trees, crops, grasses, or even algae. But the absolutely critical part of this definition is the math. These resources have to be replenished at a rate equal to or greater than their depletion. If a company is harvesting it faster than it grows back, no way, it doesn't qualify as renewable under these standards. To put this into perspective, imagine a company's raw material inputs as a big pie chart. Say 60% is virgin materials, 25% is recycled, and 15% is renewable. An investor can look at that metric and instantly assess how much a company relies on newly extracted resources versus sustainable ones. The ultimate goal for a true circular economy leader is to constantly shrink that virgin slice of the pie and expand the recycled and renewable slices, tracking all of it down to the ounce. So, we've sourced the materials, and we've weighed them. But you might be wondering, how do these sustainable choices actually impact the bottom line? Because, let's face it, in business, if it doesn't make dollars, it rarely makes sense. Which brings us to section 3, designing for the loop. Here, we're talking about sustainable product sales. You see, the standards don't just ask companies what materials they buy. They ask how much money they make from selling well-designed circular products. And companies have to report this in their presentation currency, meaning actual real-world dollars, euros, or yen. They aren't just tracking good deeds or patting themselves on the back. They are required to track the actual hard revenue earned from sustainable goods.
It's the ultimate proof to the market that a company's sustainable packaging is commercially viable.
So, the crucial point is understanding exactly which products actually qualify for this revenue tracking. It breaks down into the 3 R's: reusable, recyclable, and compostable. When investors are hunting for sustainable packaging revenue, they are looking specifically for sales tied to these 3 meticulously defined categories. Let's break a couple of them down just to see how strict they really are. Take reusable, for example. You can't just take a flimsy plastic takeout tub, call it reusable because a consumer might decide to keep leftovers in it once and call it a day. Doesn't work like that. Under the standard, the package must be deliberately conceived and designed to accomplish a specific number of trips or rotations for its original intended purpose. It literally has to be engineered for longevity. And then let's look at the science of compostable. It's not just about, breaking down eventually. It must undergo biological degradation during composting to yield CO2, water, inorganic compounds, and biomass. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, it must leave absolutely zero visible, distinguishable, or toxic residue behind. It has to safely, completely return to the earth. So, now that we understand the raw materials coming in and the revenue generated by those final products, we have to ask a bigger question. How do companies connect these dots? How do they optimize a package's entire existence from the moment of its creation all the way to its ultimate disposal? Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. Strategies for sustainable life cycles. This is all about planning for the future.
This is where companies have to lay out their master plan for continuous improvement, moving beyond just today's metrics and looking at tomorrow's innovations. The absolute gold standard for this overarching strategy is the Lifecycle Assessment, or LCA. Companies use this as a massive analytical framework to maximize product efficiency and minimize environmental impacts across a product's entire life. We are talking about analyzing everything from the energy used to extract the raw material, to the fuel burned to transport it, all the way to the greenhouse gases emitted if it ends up in a landfill. The whole shebang.
And this brilliantly illustrates the concrete, actionable steps companies take based on those LCAs to shrink their footprint. Step 1 is material substitution, so swapping out virgin plastics for recycled content or compostable alternatives. Step 2 is weight and volume reduction, basically optimizing the packaging so it uses way less material overall, but still safely holds the product without all that excess bulk. And step 3 is transportation efficiency. Think about it. Lighter, smaller packaging means you can fit more boxes on a single truck, which means burning way less fuel per unit delivered. It's a win-win. What all of this shows us is that the circular economy is no longer just some theoretical pie-in-the-sky concept. It is a measurable reality. By rigorously tracking raw material percentages by weight and by strictly mandating the disclosure of actual presentation currency generated from reusable, recyclable, or compostable products, these accounting standards are taking lofty environmental goals and translating them into hard, accountable business data. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If a package is designed perfectly for the circular economy, say it's made entirely of recovered materials, it's engineered for multiple reuses, and it ultimately returns to the earth with absolutely zero toxic residue, does the concept of waste even exist anymore? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And as these standards continue to push companies toward total life cycle management, it's a reality we are getting closer to every single day. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and next time you buy something, keep looking closely at the packaging around you.